Hi, Tech. Say, if you have anything to do about what goes into these master technician films, how about having one on the hydraulic transmission?
It just so happens we are starting one on that subject right now. And here comes Art, your boss, ready to get going.
That's right. But before we go over the transmission in a car, Don, I want you to know what you're looking at and how it works. Speaking of transmissions, you know why we have them, of course.
Well, I think so.
When you're starting, you want a gear that gives you high engine speed for power. But out on the road, you want another gear so the engine can take it easy.
Just like riding a bicycle, Don. For hill climbing, give me one with a little sprocket. But to make time without working hard on the level, you need a big sprocket.
Sure. The next thing is to have the gears in the transmission shifted at the proper time. On our hydraulically operated transmission, the lever at the steering wheel lets the driver choose the range he wants, power or driving. The automatic part of the transmission makes the shift up or down between the two gears available in each range as you need one or the other. With two ranges and two speeds in each range, that makes 4 speeds forward. It'll be easier to talk about them as first, second, third, and high.
4 speeds.
That's right. But let's just think about 2 speeds for a while. The 2 in the driving range.
Sure. Third to start, high to roll, so you can do most of your driving with just 2 speeds.
That's why, with this transmission, the lever is normally kept in the driving range. In fact, you use just third and fourth 98% of the time. To be automatic, the transmission must shift its gears from third, which we use for starting, up to fourth for cruising, and then down to third again whenever we slow way down or need extra power.
All it amounts to, Don, is doing just one thing, moving a clutch sleeve inside the transmission, back or forward, so you hook up the drive pinion gear direct to the main shaft, or you disconnect it.
That's right. The automatic clutch sleeve is right back of the main drive pinion. When it's moved away from the pinion, as you can see in this rough sketch, there's no connection between the pinion and the main shaft except around through gears. So, you're in third. But if the sleeve is moved ahead toward the pinion, it bridges the gap between the main drive pinion and the shaft. So the drive is straight through, and you're in high.
Just like I said, making the transmission automatic just means moving the clutch sleeve back or forward at the right time.
We move the sleeve, Don, with the same kind of hydraulic system that we use on that car lift over there. There's a pump to provide oil pressure and a valve to turn the pressure on and off. In the transmission, the oil pushes a piston. This compresses the engaging spring, which moves the fork, which moves the clutch sleeve. Now, if the valve is open, oil pushes the piston ahead, so we're in high. If the valve is closed, the piston return spring pushes the piston back, so we're in third. Open the oil valve for high, keep it closed for third. We can hold the oil valve closed with an electric finger called a solenoid. When current goes to the solenoid, a plunger gets pushed out. So if we mount the solenoid over the valve, it will hold the valve down or closed as long as the current's turned on. So now, current holds the valve closed. That shuts off pressure to the piston, so we stay in third. We can get current for the solenoid from the battery. Putting a switch in the line will let us turn the solenoid off or on. By adding a spring, we can make the switch open itself. The next step is to find some way to hold the switch closed until we want the solenoid turned off. That's easy to do by adding an electromagnet under the switch arm. That gives us an electrically operated switch called a relay. The contacts will be held closed as long as current is flowing through the magnet in the relay.
And with the relay contacts closed, Don, current goes to the solenoid, which holds the oil valve closed, which keeps oil from pushing the piston ahead, so we stay back in third.
Now, to get from third to high, we have to make the relay magnet let go so the spring can pull the contacts apart and stop current from going to the solenoid. That's done by breaking the circuit from the relay magnet to the ground. But we don't want that to happen until the car speed is high enough for the upshift to be made. So, we run the circuit through a centrifugal governor driven off the countershaft gear cluster. At slow speed, the contacts in the governor are closed, so the current goes to the relay magnet, which holds the relay contacts closed too. But as the car picks up speed, the governor is driven faster and faster until at about 14 miles an hour, the weights are thrown out far enough to pull the points apart. When that happens, the electromagnet in the relay loses its pulling power, so the contacts open, cutting off the current to the solenoid. That means the oil valve isn't held down, so it opens up and lets oil pressure go directly to the piston. Then the piston and spring are moved ahead to shift the transmission into high.
Now, if you slow down, does the transmission shift back down again?
That's right. When the car slows down below 11 miles an hour in high, the governor points close again. So the relay points are pulled together, letting current go from the battery to the solenoid. The solenoid plunger is then forced down on the oil valve, pushing it closed again. That cuts off pressure to the piston and lets the return spring push the piston back, so the transmission shifts back to third.
So you see, if you slow down enough, you're automatically back in third. Of course, there'll be times in traffic and on hills when you want to shift down for extra power, even though you're going fast enough to keep the governor points open.
Right, Tech. That's why we add a foot-operated switch to the system, like this. As you can see, when you push the accelerator to the floorboard, this kick-down switch, as it's called, takes the place of the governor and completes the ground circuit to the electromagnet in the relay. So again, the switch is closed. The solenoid pushes the hydraulic valve closed, there's no oil pressure on the piston, and the transmission shifts back into third.
That doesn't sound too hard to understand.
It isn't. You have a hydraulic system to do the work of shifting. You add an electrical control to turn the hydraulic system on and off, and you add a governor to turn the electrical system on and off, depending on the speed of the car. So the speed of the car actually turns the hydraulic system off or on.
While you're looking at this, somebody better turn the record over.
As I said before, there's an oil pump right in the transmission to build up the pressure. It's driven from the main shaft. A relief valve allows excess oil to return to the transmission case in order to control maximum oil pressure. Now let's look at the valve system we use to keep hydraulic pressure on or off the piston, depending on what's needed. Actually, there are two valves. The large one at the left is the main valve. It's held down by a coil spring. In this position, it keeps oil under pressure from going to the piston. To operate this large valve, there's a small valve at the right called the pilot valve. When it's held down in this position, the main valve stays closed too, because the pilot valve keeps oil from reaching the passage below the main valve. But now, if the pilot valve is raised, like this, oil under pressure can go through the lower passage, get under the main valve and push it up. As you can see, when that happens, oil can also flow past the upper flange of the main valve and over to the piston that shifts the sleeve. The pilot valve is pushed up by the small coil spring underneath it. To push it down, we use the solenoid, that electric finger we talked about. As you can see here, when the solenoid current's on, the solenoid plunger is forced down, pushing the pilot valve ahead of it. With the pilot valve cutting off oil pressure and opening up the drain passage, the main valve is pushed down by its spring, cutting off pressure to the piston.
All you have to remember, Don, is that turning the solenoid current on shuts the oil pressure off as far as the piston's concerned, so it doesn't shift. But if the current to the solenoid's turned off, that puts oil pressure on the piston, so it gets pushed ahead for the upshift.
Well, then, if the solenoid's turned on, the car's in third. And if you turn it off, the transmission shifts to high.
Well, Don, it's not quite as simple as that, but that's the idea, all right. It'll probably be easier to follow the rest of the electrical controls if we use some rough diagrams to show what happens in actual car operation. Of course, we want to start in third speed. So, as you know now, we have to feed current to the solenoid right at the start to close the oil valve so the car won't upshift as soon as the oil pump starts working. And remember, too, that means the governor points have to be closed, so the switch in the solenoid circuit will be held closed. When the ignition is turned on, current goes to the fuse or battery terminal of the relay. From there, it goes through the coils in the magnet and out through the governor to the ground, so the magnet pulls the contacts together. This lets current go right from the battery to the solenoid. So now the pilot valve is being held down the way we want it. Now, when the car is going around 14 miles an hour in the driving range, the weights in the governor pull the contacts apart, breaking the circuit to the ground. When that happens, current no longer flows through the magnet in the relay, so the contacts for the solenoid circuit open up, putting the solenoid itself out of operation.
Remember what happens when you break the circuit to the solenoid, Don?
Sure. Like Art showed us in one of those pictures he had. The oil valve's open, so pressure goes to the piston. So the piston gets moved ahead and shifts the transmission into high.
That's right, except for one point. The oil moves the piston ahead, all right. That compresses the engaging spring, which will move the sleeve. But not until the instant the driver asks for the upshift. The shift sleeve is held back by this blocker ring, and it stays held back as long as the engine's turning faster than the shaft. Then, when the driver lifts his foot off the accelerator for a second, the engine slows down to match the shaft speed. When the speeds match, the blocker ring lines up so the clutch sleeve is moved the rest of the way by the engaging spring. And you're in high.
Let's look at this picture while the record's being changed. Now it's in high. But how about it, Don? Think you could tell us how we got there? In high, that is?
Sure, that is, I think so. When we started, first the solenoid was hot because the circuit through the solenoid was grounded by the governor. Second, that meant there wasn't any hydraulic pressure against the piston. Third, the spring held the clutch sleeve back in third speed. Then, after the car was going more than 14 miles an hour, the governor points opened. That broke the circuit through the relay, turning the solenoid off. That let the oil valves come up so that the piston was pushed ahead. Then when the driver let up on the gas for a second, the blocker ring lined up so the sleeve was moved by the engaging spring to complete the shift.
Right you are. And the downshift ought to be even easier.
That's automatic too, isn't it?
Yes, shifting down is automatic, Don, whenever the car speed drops below 11 miles an hour in high. First, the governor points close. When that happens, with the circuit completed through the magnet in the relay contacts are pulled together again, so current goes from the battery to the solenoid. The solenoid pushes the pilot valve down, cutting off the hydraulic pressure. So, the main valve drops down, and the spring starts to push the piston back. But one more thing has to be done. As long as power is going through the clutch sleeve, the spring can't pull the sleeve free from the drive pinion. So the power's got to be cut off just for an instant. That's easy to take care of. It's done with the interrupter switch. Here's how it works. As the piston moves under the switch, it raises a ball, which closes the interrupter switch contacts. That grounds a wire that comes from the ignition coil through the relay. You see, there are really two contacts that are closed by the magnet in the relay. The second contact connects the distributor terminal of the coil to the wire from the interrupter switch. When the interrupter switch is closed by the piston raising the ball, it shorts out the ignition system, relieving the power momentarily. The piston return spring then can pull the shift sleeve back off the pinion during the instant the engine misses a couple of explosions. As soon as the piston passes beyond the ball, ignition is restored.
Guess that takes care of everything except the kickdown.
Kickdown? Oh, that's the foot switch Art talked about, isn't it?
That's right. And as we said before, Don, it's a switch that takes the place of the governor. It lets the driver control the transmission, so he can shift down to third without having to slow down to the speed where the governor points close. It's located in the carburetor and puts the transmission electrical system in operation by providing a ground connection when you push the accelerator down to the floor.
You use it if you need extra power for passing, Don.
Suppose you stepped on it at 60 miles an hour.
Nothing would happen, Don. There's an upper limit control at the carburetor with a metal spacer that completes the contacts at ordinary speeds. But you wouldn't gain anything by shifting down at high car speeds. So, the little metal spacer is pulled up out of the way by suction in the carburetor above 40 to 45 miles an hour to prevent the contacts from meeting.
As I get it, the governor automatically shifts the transmission into third if you go slow enough. And the kickdown lets the driver do the shifting at higher speed, just by pushing the accelerator to the floor.
Don, I have to congratulate you right the first time. Now that you understand the driving range, what happens in the power range should be easy.
That's right. Only in the power range, the manual clutch sleeve is moved back. The same piston moves the same automatic clutch sleeve, but you get two lower gear ratios, first and second. Of course, because of the faster engine speeds in the lower gears, the upshift comes sooner, at about 7 miles an hour. And the governor calls for a downshift if the car speed drops below 6 miles an hour in second.
Okay, let's flip the record once again.
The use of engine compression as an aid in braking brings up one point we should talk about, so you'll know why we have to be in either second or fourth speed. It's due to the use of this freewheeling gear at the front of the transmission countershaft. First, let's be sure we all know how it works. Actually, it operates much like the coaster hub on the rear wheel of a bicycle. It drives through rollers that lock the shaft to the gear only when the gear is doing the driving. But when you're coasting, so the gear is no longer doing the driving, the rollers free themselves from the gear, and there's no drive back the other way. You'll see why we need this freewheeling gear in the transmission if we quickly trace the power flow in each speed. As you know, in a constant mesh-type transmission, the gears on the main shaft are free running, so they drive only when they are connected to the shaft through the spline clutch sleeve. In first speed, the direct speed clutch sleeve, that's the one that is automatically moved by the hydraulic piston, is held back, so there's no connection between the main drive pinion and the third speed gear. As a result, the power goes through the freewheeling gear. That wedges the rollers between the gear and the hub, so the countershaft cluster gear is being driven also. Remember, the third speed gear is entirely free from the main shaft, so it turns but doesn't drive anything. As a result, the power goes to the first speed gear, which is locked to the shaft by the manual clutch sleeve. Now, when the shift is made to second speed, the direct speed clutch sleeve connects the main drive pinion to the third speed gear, which in turn drives the countershaft cluster through its third speed gear. Because of the difference in gear ratios, the countershaft cluster gears must be able to run faster than the freewheeling gear, which is still in mesh with the drive pinion. The freewheeling unit makes this possible because the rollers are released, letting the hub run free. The freewheeling sleeve, which also is moved ahead when the automatic shift is made, holds the rollers released by moving the retainer slightly in the reverse direction. With power now going through gears that are locked to the shafts, the drive works both ways. That is, the engine can turn the rear wheels, or the rear wheels can turn the engine. In third speed, with the clutch sleeve moved back and the manual sleeve moved ahead, the drive is again through the freewheeling gear, as shown here. But remember, just the same as in first speed, the drive can be just one way. In fourth speed, as in second, the power flow bypasses the freewheeling gear. So in this speed also, the drive can be in either direction. The engine can turn the rear wheels, or the rear wheels can turn the engine.
So, if an owner tells you he doesn't get enough engine braking on steep hills, or that he was unable to start his car by pushing, chances are what he needs is instruction on how to put the transmission in the proper gear.
As you know, to take advantage of engine compression for braking, all he has to do is push the clutch pedal down as soon as the car speed reaches about 8 miles an hour in the low range. The car will automatically shift into second.
He only has to hold the clutch down long enough for the transmission to upshift. If you're in the driving range, you're usually going faster than 14 miles an hour when you shift down to get the use of engine compression. So just stepping on the clutch and shifting the lever to the power range will automatically put the car in second gear.
How about when you push a car to start it, like when the battery's down?
Nothing to it, Don. All you do is put the lever in the power range, turn on the ignition, and hold the clutch pedal down. As soon as the car speed is over 8 miles an hour, you let up on the clutch. You'll automatically be in second, so the rear wheels can start turning the engine over.
You see, this transmission isn't so tough, is it? And let me give you a tip. To shift up, everything's up. The car speed is up. The electrical circuit's off the ground. That's up, isn't it? The solenoid plunger's up. The oil valves are up. The pressure's up on the piston. And the accelerator pedal is up. For a second, anyway. When you shift down, everything's down. the car speed, or the accelerator pedal for the kickdown. The electric circuit's grounded, so that's down. The solenoid plunger is down. The oil valves drop down, so the pressure on the piston is down.
And when you go over to help Leo on the next job, Don, just use text easy reminder. Up for upshift, down for downshift. You'll find it'll be a big help in diagnosis.
But first, let's take a look at the reference book we have on this session so we can clear up any questions anybody has.